Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode from the Board Game Man. My name is Jamie Cloninger. Today we're going to go back to 1975 when I was 1 year old, and we're going to look at a game from Milton Bradley called Tank Battle. Let's go to the gamer's table and I'll show you how to play. Hello everybody and welcome to the Gamers Table. Here is Tank Battle. Here is the board. It's a grid of 100 spaces. One side has 1 to 50 and the other side has 51 to 100. The grids are numbered, so you know. What's cool is that there's a number on your side and on the other side, so I can tell this is 54 and they can tell on their side it's 54. So it's really cool how they have that as a double-sided, which is really awesome. Now each side is going to start off with 6 tanks. You can place them anywhere you want on the back row. You also have a headquarters, ammo, and fuel. All right, and you also have 5 anti-tank guns. Now the object of the game is you're trying to blow up all 6 of your opponent's tanks. Each tank will have a number behind it. As for instance, you can see this has a 4. This has a 1, for instance. And I'll go over these numbers in just a moment. Movement. How you move the tanks is you have a maximum of 6 spaces you can move the tanks. But not one tank can move more than 3 at one time. So for instance, if I want to go, I can go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. As long as I do 6 spaces total, I'm good to go. I can move the tanks wherever I want. But the tanks cannot go diagonally, and they can't go backwards. So you must be going forward or sideways. That's how you do it. And the total number is 6 moves with one tank not doing any more than 3 at one time. So that's how that works. Now on the first turn, and I'll go over this stuff in just a moment here. On the first turn, when you're moving 6 spaces total, no one's shooting at each other. So the first 6 moves are pretty much a free. You're just trying to you're starting to gain momentum a little bit. And then I'll go over these here. So let's do, I'm going to do 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and 1. So that's a total of 6 moves I made. Not one tank went more than 3 spaces. So now we got this side over here. We're going to do maybe 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 1. So that's a total of 6. Now, this is when the grids come into play. So these are going to actually be facing you like this. One's going to be facing this way. The other one's going to be facing this way. That way you're not seeing what your opponent is doing. But for filming this and showing you how this is done, that's why I have it done this way. But technically it would be facing each opponent. Each opponent's going to have 5 of these white pegs. And these are extra shots that you can use along the way. These are with the anti-tank guns. You're able to use one of these. But as soon as you use 1 or 2 or 3, you can use as many as you want per a turn. They're only a 1 use. So as soon as you use the 1 or 2 or 3, they're out of the game for the rest of the game. So you might want to hang on to those as much as you can. Each side will have 6 of these red pegs. So what you're going to do is you're going to take these 6 red pegs on our first attempt here. And I'm going to try to guess what numbers they're going to finish their tanks on. So what I'll do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to go, okay, I'm going to study where all their stuff is. I'm going to say, okay, I think here, I'm just going to start putting red pegs in here on the numbers that I believe he's going to move his tanks to. And you get 6 shots. And they have to be on an unoccupied space. So for instance, on this tank, it's on 61. I can't choose 61 as one. If he doesn't move it, I blow it up. That's not the case. It has to be a tank that was moved on that space. So just an FYI on that. Okay. So let's do this. Okay. So as you see, I placed 6 red pegs in there. I didn't use any of my whites yet. And if I did, I could do that. But if I do use any of my whites, I have to inform the other player that I'm using 1, I'm using 2. That way they know. because they're not going to know because this is facing me. So once I chose the 6 squares I believe he's going to move to, he's going to go ahead and move 6 pieces, or 6 spaces. So he's going to go, okay, I'm going to go 1, 2, let's go 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so those are the 6 moves he decides to go. So what we're doing, we're going to look on here. I'm going to look and see, okay, he moved to 68. Nope, he's safe there. I got 65. Uh-oh, 65 was one that I chose. As you can see here, 65 was one of the numbers I chose. So 65 is blown up. Boom. He is out of the game. 51. Oh, I also chose 51. But I'm going to keep him in there for a second because I want to show you what happens when you go up against an anti-tank gun. 74, that one's safe. And that was all the ones that were moved. Okay. So that's what happens when you land on one. Now, at the very beginning of the game, I almost forgot to mention this. There are landmines in the game as well. Each player has 2 landmines. What each player is going to do is they're going to write down what numbers they believe they're going to land on. So here I wrote 68 and 72. So if any one of these land, oh, 68. Oh my goodness, there you go. I didn't realize that. This landmine would come into play. This one would actually blow up that tank. So what happens is you're going to write both of these numbers. It tells you to place it in your headquarters face down. That's how it says in the instructions. Or if you want for easy access, you could just kind of put them like in the corner of your thing here or something. That way that you don't sit there and lift it up. But that's what it says in the instructions. So if I were to look up, I go, oh, landmine, boom, 68. 68 comes out of the game. That tank is blown out of the game, just like that. And you still have one other landmine. That's what happens there. Now let me show you what happens here. If I say, I wanted to move one of my moves here to 52. Now I am next to the anti-tank gun. Dun, dun, dun. What happens is here is you're going to go up against the anti-tank gun. This is when this little spinner comes into play. It's called the tank against gun spinner. And you can see the anti-tank gun has a very little resistance on there. It looks like the has a heavy advantage, but it does happen. So let's go ahead and spin this and see what happens. And the anti-tank gun is destroyed. Boom. So what happens is this is now destroyed. This comes out of the game. And that player, since he lost one of his anti-tank guns, loses one of his white pegs as well. So just like that, he loses one of these, and now he only has 4 extra ones to deal with for the rest of the game. So each one of these you lose a white peg. And that's how that works. Now obviously if it says tank destroyed, self-explanatory, the tank is blown up by the little anti-tank gun, which it does happen. It has been spun before. Okay, so there we have it there. That's what the spinner is for. Now let me tell you what happens when you blow up these 3 items here. Say you roll up on the fuel. Say you're going to move 2. Boom, I took out the fuel. What happens is when you take out the fuel, all right, this is what happens. It's called the fuel dump. The player losing his fuel dump also loses mobility and is able to move his tanks a total of only 4 squares. So that you lose a lot of mobility that way. So instead of doing 6 moves, you only do 4. So that's a pretty big one. So you lose the fuel, that's what happens. If someone goes after the ammo and takes out your ammunition dump, what happens is you only get 1 red peg for every tank you have on the table. So say this tank came over here, took out that gun, you would actually lose another white one. You took out your ammo. Say you lost a couple tanks here along the way. Say you lost 3 of them. However many tanks you have left on the board, that's how many red pegs you'd get. So that's a big blow as well. So you'd only have 3 red pegs in this case, and say later on in the game you lose another one. Then you take another red peg out, and then you'd only have 2 to work with. So that can be pretty brutal when the ammo is taken out. Now when the headquarters are taken out, all that happens there is any active landmines that are still active are lost. So for instance, in this one, if the round tank came over and took out, 72 would now be a safe area and would no longer be a landmine. And that's how that works. And obviously if it comes to 2 tanks facing each other, say this happens and you go up against the tank against tank, you're going to look at the numbers. Actually, let's go this way, sorry. And it's just like I said, Stratego. You're going to look at the number on the back of the tank, 6, and we got 6 on this one. So if they are a tie, both tanks are taken out. But in this case, that's the same tank. Oops. There we go. So this tank and this tank will go up each other. This would be a 6. And let's see, this would be a 4. That means this tank will be taken out and this tank stays in the game. So it's like Stratego when you go, okay, well, the 2 numbers, I got the higher number. Okay, the other guy gets taken out. Now let's say one of your tanks makes it all the way to the other side. When that happens, it is called a command tank, and you'll see there's like a little hole in the top of every tank. What happens is you're going to take one of these flags. Oh, I just dropped it on the floor. Actually, I landed right on my foot. There we go. You take this little flag, and you're going to put it in the tank. That way, it is now a command tank. Dun, 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 it now has a flag. And the only other power this tank has, more than all the other ones, is this one can go backwards. Still cannot go diagonally. Diagonally is still forbidden in the game. So no matter what kind of super tank you are, there is no diagonal. But he can move backwards. So it's kind of almost like checkers when you go king me, and then he can kind of go all over the place. This is almost the same way, except he can't go diagonally. So he can actually go backwards, forwards, sideways. He can be a pretty lethal tank if you want to be. Now say we have this scenario where a tank is going to land right in between 2 different areas here, where he's adjacent to 2 different things. He can choose whichever one he wants to choose first. He must fight both of them. So, for instance, he can go after the tank first, or if he can go after the anti-gun. He can choose whichever he wants because he's adjacent to both opponent's pieces. So, say he goes, okay, I want to go after the gun first. Then he's going to go ahead and spin the wheel, or spinner, I'm sorry. Anti-tank gun destroyed. Boom. Person loses 1. Now he has to go up against the tank, which in this case, you're going to look at the numbers. This one's 5, and this one is 6. He just took out the tank as well. So you can actually go adjacent to 2 of your opponent's pieces and go after them both. You get to choose which one you want to do first. In that case, he had a win-win scenario and took out both. So you can do that if you land adjacent to 2 of your opponent's pieces. So that, my friends, is how you play Tank Battle. The first player to blow up all 6 of your enemy's tanks wins the game.